Welcome back. Local filmmaker Warren Skeels is celebrating a major milestone as his new thriller hits theaters nationwide. Here to tell us about the thrill ride of making The Man in the White Van is director and co-author Warren Skeels. Good morning, Warren.
Good morning, Ann. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So this movie is inspired by the true story of a serial killer from Hernando County named Billy Mansfield. How did you first hear about this case, and what made you decide that you wanted to create a film around it?
So I actually had coffee with a surviving victim of Billy Mansfield Jr., and that was really kind of the catalyst for really engaging me, because I connected to the survivor's story, and I thought, there's so many stories about serial killers out there that are, glorifying the serial killer. It's about, their MO, or it's a detective or a journalist tracking down the serial killer. And what really struck me was that this was from her point of view, and I was hearing her story and her accounting of it, and that's what really just drew me in. And I thought it was a really unique perspective. It was an inspirational story of survival, having escaped a serial killer that she didn't know at the time was a serial killer. She found out about 5 years later, when she was going to college, and saw a headline in a newspaper, and immediately saw him and said, that was the guy.
And this surviving victim that you met initially, is that the person that you've built the central character around in this film?
Yeah, so the character is based on her. Annie Williams is the character in the film, and we took probably about 80% of her actual real life story as sort of the building blocks of the screenplay, and then there's another victim story that we pulled in for the end to really capture the entire storyline of the fictional Annie Williams in the movie.
And there are a number of people that didn't survive the serial killer. I mean, the family that he came from was a family of kind of serial killers and terrible offenders. But I'm interested in trying to tell the story from the perspective, as you say, because there has been this new discussion in the world of true crime about trying to be mindful of that, to not exploit somebody's terrible experience or a family's terrible experience. And so it's a little bit of a difficult needle to thread sometimes, is it not?
It is. I mean, certainly there is a thirst for it, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be just this mountain of material out there on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. But I think there's another side to it all, and that's really what interested me in exploring the survivor and the victim side, as opposed to just sort of recanting what the serial killer did, so to speak.
Yeah. And so one of the things that's particularly shocking and scary about this story is the fact that no one believed this girl. I mean, she was sort of having this experience. Tell us. I mean, she was seeing somebody stalking her.
Yeah. So, I mean, in real life, and this is kind of another component that really fascinated me in terms of trying to be authentic to her, the circumstances of 1975 in rural Florida, where her parents were a well-to-do, they were a well-to-do family, affluent in the area, and she admittedly was a teller of tall tales. She fibbed a lot, as she said. I thought that was cute. She didn't say she lied; she said she fibbed, and that just sort of set the stakes for her parents, who never really knew, what was the truth and what wasn't the truth, and just the idea of something bad happening in their neck of the woods, so to speak, was just unfathomable. I mean, even the local, sheriff, the deputy at the time, said that their biggest concern was getting the town drunk home on a Friday night. So the idea of something darker, more nefarious, that was really left for the big cities of New York and Chicago and southern rural Florida in 1975. It didn't even cross their minds that something as dark and horrible as a serial killer was really lurking in the woods.
It was a different time, too. I mean, how do you portray that in your film, that a mindset that isn't perhaps as quick to jump to those sinister, conclusions than today?
Yeah, so, I mean, working with Ali Larder and Sean Astin, who played the parents, that was actually something for all three of us, really sitting down and talking through and dialing in what was that mindset of a parent in the early mid-'70s compared to being, a modern contemporary parent now, where we're just flooded with, mass media telling us that there is a danger around every corner. Our children are not safe anywhere. And it was completely different, back in the '70s, where, we didn't have There weren't missing persons on milk cartons. 911 really wasn't a national, didn't exist yet. It was before the internet, before social media. It really truly was a time where ignorance was bliss.
And it's odd too because, I mean, we talk about stranger danger. It is so much less pronounced today than it was back in the '70s where there really were sort of routine child kidnapping. It doesn't happen that much today. It's a pretty extraordinary event when it does.
True. And, what another piece to all of this, when I started doing the research into, what she called the man in the white van, I really found that this was one of a pocket of major crimes that were associated with the buildup of the white van becoming a symbol of fear that is sort of a trope today, but they're, the real reasons why it became, such a symbol of fear. And between Dean Corell, the toolbox killer, and the inner workings of Billy Mansfield Jr., that's why we have that
Sure.
symbol right now.
I mean, one of the worst child crimes in Jacksonville, the murder of Cherish Periwinkle, was committed by a man in a white van. So, I mean, there is, um, I guess, some truth behind that trope. But I want to talk to you. I mean, this is a huge film for you. You've done a lot of work before. Most recently, you've been working on Siesta Key, which is this MTV reality show.
Very different world.
Yeah, I am curious about that. I mean, how do you, how does this compare? I guess the experience of having a film of this release, magnitude versus the TV stuff that you've done or the other films.
Yeah, I mean, working on Siesta Key was, I mean, as a director, it's great because it's really like, learning and crafting your chops and being able to work fast. And Gareth Paul Cox was a cinematographer and then became a director as well on Siesta Key. He's also a Jacksonville local man and talent who has been a longtime collaborator. So when the opportunity of making The Man in the White Van and turning it from a screenplay into a feature came about, I really tapped Gareth to come on board as a cinematographer because he is so talented. And we both initially, all of our training is really in scripted and narrative. So it was just a matter of translating all those skills over into, into the genre of a thriller, that's the genre I loved growing up, like Hitchcock and, Rear Window and Psycho and Vertigo. I mean, those are the films that I grew up loving and wanting to tell those kind of stories.
We just got about a minute left, but it's Sharon Cobb's also the screenwriter on this,
She
also
is.
from Jacksonville. It's a film set in Florida, and yet you had to film in Louisiana. And I guess I just like you'd hear briefly on the issue of incentives.
Sure. Yeah. First off, Sharon Cobb is an incredible writer, an amazing collaborator. And also, I should mention that Scott Borland did the score for the film and composed.
Also local.
Also local. Did incredible job. His versatility between being able to deal with the thriller themes, but then also the touching sister and romantic themes in there as well. Just really crafted a beautiful score. But as far as incentives go, I mean, that's really that's the big deal. Louisiana has them, Georgia has them, Florida does not have them, and
In this case, it made all the difference.
in this case, it was really a difference between ultimately being able to tell a story and shoot it in Florida, or take it to a state that has incentives.
Well, Warren Skeels, congrats on the film. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thanks so much for having me.